know if it's just me, but I'm very drawn to unique board games. And when I can also learn about something I'm unfamiliar with, well, that's just icing on the cake. Allow me to set the scene. It's the 16th century, and you're the head of an English or Scottish family in the midst of the raids and battles along the border between England and Scotland. You're striving to be the most wealthy and famous family of the land in Border Reivers Anglo-Scottish Border Raids 1513 to 1603, which was designed by Ed Beach and published by GMT Games, who sponsored this video. Hi everyone, my name is Candace Harris from Board Game Geek. We've got sheep to defend and notoriety to gain, so let's get down to the table to learn how to play Border Reivers. Border Reivers is a historical strategy game for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6 players, which combines card drafting and resource management with wargame elements and simultaneous gameplay to create a unique feeling competitive board game with minimal downtime. Each player leads one of the 6 major families of the English-Scottish border during the 16th century: Grey, Fenwick, Docra, Maxwell, Kerr, or Hume. You'll be managing your livestock, recruiting helpful allies, building up your defenses, and gaining glory from battles while dealing with family feuds, raiding your neighbors, and competing to be more notorious than your opponents in different regions on the map. Your goal is to increase the wealth and fame of your family throughout the reigns of Henry and Elizabeth to end the century as the most famous border reiver of all time. But before I fill you in on how to become the most notorious family in Border Reivers, let's go over the setup. For this video, I'll be setting up a 4-player game, and when you're playing a multiplayer game of Border Reivers with less than 6 players, you have to make some adjustments to the setup as shown in the rulebook. Remove the Hume and Grey family sheets and components, as well as the 11 defense tokens that don't have a 4P noted on them. Also, for a 4-player game, you won't be using all of the cards. Remove the 8 cards for each turn's summer cards that don't have either a 4P or a question mark on them. Then randomly add in 10 of the 16 cards with the question mark designation, so each summer card set has 28 cards. You'll also need to remove the Flodden Field, Haddon Rig, and Border Beacons cards from the event deck. The game board is divided into 6 marches, and for a 4-player game, the English East March and Scottish East March are both out of play. Now that those 4-player setup adjustments are out of the way, let's continue with the rest of the setup steps. Next, each player chooses one of the available families, or the families can be assigned randomly. Give each player the family sheet, cubes, permanent defense tokens, 6 target cards, 1 warden card, and 2 attack indicators for the family they're controlling. Even though I'm focused on setting up a 4-player game, I figured I'd mention that when you're playing with 2 or 3 players, each player plays with 2 different families, so you'll take all of the components for each of the families you're leading. Place your family sheet near your home march and add your sheep on map marker on the highlighted 4 space. Next, set up the map as follows. Place 1 sheep standing up in each farm region, except for the out of play marches. Place a 2nd sheep standing up in the farm region in the debatable land. Place the available warden defense tokens face up in their box in the upper right corner of the card deck's display. Then add the following items to the map for each family in play. Place 3 horses standing up in your horse box. Place 8 cattle, 1 5 and 3 1s in your cattle box. Add a deputy warden and a rumor defense token in your defense token box. Place 1 cube on the 0 space of the victory track. Place 1 cube on the 3 space of your family's home march notoriety track. Place 1 cube from the family directly across the border into the jailbreak box of each march. For example, you'll place a Scottish West March cube in the English West March jailbreak box, and vice versa. Likewise, place 1 cube from the family directly across the border in the feud box of each march. Then grab 2 opaque containers. These aren't included with the game, but you can use a cup, coffee mug, cloth bag, or anything that can hold components you'll be randomly drawing. Fill 1 with each family's turn order cube, and the other with the remaining defense tokens. Finally, prepare the card decks by separately shuffling each set of summer cards and placing these decks face down near the board. Shuffle the event deck and place it face down on the designated space on the card deck's display. Now you're ready to gather your livestock and raid your neighbors. Border Reivers is played over exactly 3 turns, with each representing about 30 years. Players represent the major families during the Anglo-Scottish border raids between 1513 and 1603. Reiver activities along the border varied widely based on the time of year. Therefore, each turn is organized into 4 seasons, starting with summer. I'll go over how each season works shortly, but the flow of each season is well summarized on the player aid for reference, which is super helpful. At the end of turn 3, there's an end of game scoring phase, and the player whose family has the highest victory point total is the winner. At the beginning of summer, each player receives a hand of 7 summer cards dealt randomly from the deck of cards for the current turn. Then players draft cards over 6 rounds. During each round, each player simultaneously selects a card from their current hand to keep and act on, and then the remaining cards are passed face down to an adjacent player, noting that you cannot look at the cards that were passed to you until all cards in the current round are resolved. The direction that you pass cards changes depending on the turn. On turn 1, you'll pass cards to the player on your left for each round of drafting. On turn 2, you'll pass cards to the player on your right. And on turn 3, you'll roll a die before you start passing cards. If it's odd, you'll pass cards to the left for the turn. Otherwise, if it's even, you'll pass cards to the right. Regardless of which direction you're passing cards for the turn, remember, you're only doing 6 rounds of drafting, even though you were dealt 7 cards. During the 6th and final round, each player selects 1 card to keep as usual, then places the final card face down on the summer card discards pile. Now you're probably wondering what kind of cards you can expect in summer, and what do you do with them after you draft each of them. Each round of summer, when all players have selected a card and passed their remaining cards, everyone reveals their selected card and resolves it simultaneously based on 4 possible actions. You can recruit if the card you selected is a Reiver, Warden, Office, or Allied Grain, and you have enough cattle to afford the card. In that case, you'll pay the cattle cost to the bank and then place the recruited card face up on the matching box of your family sheet. If there's already a card there, place it face up on the summer cards out of play pile. However, starting on turn 2, the Office number 2, Allied Grain number 2 slot is available, and as it shows, you can place an Office or Allied Grain card there if it's turn 2 or later. And these slots are flexible, so if it's turn 2 or later and you're recruiting an Office or Allied Grain when the Office number 2, Allied Grain number 2 slot is already occupied, you can move any previously played Office or Allied Grain to the out of play pile and then swap the remaining cards as desired, as long as each slot only has 1 card placed in a legal slot. If you recruited a Warden, retrieve the corresponding Warden token from the top of the card deck's display and add it to your defense tokens box on the map. If you already had a Warden token in that box, remove it from play along with the corresponding card for the previous Warden. If the summer card you select is a defense token, livestock, permanent defense, or vassal, and you have enough cattle to afford it, you may play it by paying the cattle cost, resolving its effect, and then adding the card face up to the summer cards out of play pile. For cards that give you defense tokens, draw the specified number of defense tokens from the cup and place them face down in your defense tokens box on the map. You can secretly look at your defense tokens at any time during the game. For cards that give you livestock, if it's cattle, take the specified number of cattle from the bank and add them to your cattle box on the map. If it's sheep, take the specified number of sheep from the bank and add them standing up to farm regions in your march. And if it's horses, take the specified number of horses from the bank and add them standing up to your horses box on the map. For permanent defense cards, take the chosen Castle Garrison or Peels tokens from the 4 you received at setup, then add each marker chosen to the matching named permanent defense site in your march. For vassal cards, select upright sheep in farm regions of your march as specified on the card and flip them onto their side to indicate that they're protected from raids. If you choose a card with a +1 cattle icon, instead of recruiting or playing the card, you'll hold it. Place the card face down on the held cards box of your family sheet without revealing it to the other players, and then gain 1 cattle from the bank. Any held cards can be played in an upcoming winter or spring phase. But be mindful of the amount of cards you're holding, since you have a hand size limit that gets checked in autumn, meaning you can place a card here even if it puts you over your current hand size, because hand size limits only apply during the autumn. You also can always discard any summer card to take a single default action, which is less powerful, but hey, sometimes it's exactly what you need. Your choices are listed on your family sheet, so you could simply discard a card to add 1 notoriety to your home march, or discard a card to add 1 horse. Just remember, when you discard a summer card, you only choose 1 of the default actions. Also, keep in mind when you're placing a summer card on the card deck's display, the summer card discards pile is separate from the out of play pile. The out of play pile is specifically for cards that were played or knocked out of the game by a newly recruited card, whereas cards in the discards pile may come back into play. That sums up summer. Remember, you'll be dealt 7 cards, but you'll only select 6 of them to either recruit, play, hold, or discard. Then the final card in your hand is discarded. In autumn, you'll prepare for the upcoming winter raids. First, there's an economic update, where you'll start by having each family make sure their sheep on map tracker is positioned correctly based on the number of sheep they own on the map, factoring in the Abbot of Jedburgh and Prior of Hexham cards, which move the marker 2 columns to the right. Then you'll check your horse limit, and if you have more horses than your current limit, return the excess to the bank. Next, if you have more held cards than your current hand size, discard cards of your choice down to your hand size. Finally, gain cattle equal to your cattle income. Next, in the autumn phase, you'll draw events. Flip over 3 events if you're playing with 3 or 6 players, or 2 events in a game with 2 or 4 players. If any of the 6 battles that take place in a specific march are drawn, place the event card over the corresponding battlefield on the map. Any other events that are drawn are placed in the current events area on the edge of the map near the English East March. These non-battle events alter the resolution of attacks made by any player for the rest of the turn. These events should make sense after I go over what happens in winter. But I do want to mention that if you draw the Rough Wooing or Mary Queen of Scots events, which allow combat dice to be re-rolled, place the specified number of re-roll dice on the card now so it's easy to keep track of how many re-rolls have been taken. Take dice off of the card as re-rolls are used, but no more than 3 of the re-roll dice from one of these events can be used in a single combat. The last step in autumn is for everyone to place defenses, and this can be done simultaneously. Take the defense tokens and secretly place them face down on the defense token boxes in your march. Only 1 token can be added to each box, and you can only place a defense token in a farm defense token box if it has at least 1 green die or if it only has text. Tokens can only be placed in a town or family seat defense token box if they have at least 1 gray die or are text only. It is possible that a family could possess too many tokens to place all of them on the map. In that case, simply return any excess tokens to your defense token box. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. It's winter. Winter consists of 2 rounds of combat with up to 7 individual steps. Each round, the families pick attack targets, determine the number of attack and defense dice that need to be rolled, and then resolve each family's attack. Combats can be one of 4 types: raid, feud, jailbreak, or battle. And these attacks can cause livestock to change hands, notoriety to be gained or lost, and victory points to be scored. Regardless of which type of combat you choose during winter, you'll play through the steps listed on the player aid, and you'll complete each step for all families before moving on to the next step. The first step in winter is to determine turn order, and the way you do this varies each turn. In turn 1, you draw cubes randomly from the turn order container and place them on the board one at a time, starting with box 1. In turn 2, you place cubes in the reverse order of each family's current VP score, so box 1 has the cube for the family in last place, and the last box has a cube for the family in first place. If any families are tied on the victory track, the family with the most horses is leading. If there's still a tie, then see who has the most sheep, then the most cattle to determine who's leading. This tie-breaking procedure is summarized on the player aid, and in the rare case there's still a tie, check out section 9.3 of the rulebook. When determining turn order in turn 3, place cubes in the reverse VP order, like in turn 2. Also, in turns 2 and 3, you'll keep the same turn order for both rounds of combat. However, in turn 1, you'll redo the random draw before the second round of combat. After establishing the turn order, players simultaneously select a single target card for the first combat round and place it face down in the card slot beneath their turn order cube. Once everyone's done this, reveal all of the target cards. Each family has 6 target cards at the start of the game, and target cards determine which types of combat your family can perform and which area on the map the attack can take place. If the target card you play is one of the 3 march cards, a raid or battle may be chosen in the marches shown in the targets section of that card along with the desired attack type. For example, with the Docker family's target cross-border march card, you could battle in the English West March, or you could raid or battle in the Scottish Middle March, or raid or battle in the Scottish East March if you're playing a 6-player game with the East Marches in play. These target cards can also be used to select a feud or jailbreak where one of your cubes is present as shown at the bottom of the card. The other 3 wildcard target cards allow you to target any march for various attacks and give you a +1 modifier on each die rolled for the corresponding attack you choose. I'll cover how each type of attack works shortly, but as a heads up, you can only play each target card once per game, and it's usually better to save those juicy +1 modifier cards until later in the game when you'll be rolling more dice. After each target card is resolved, it's moved to the target card's discard pile and is out of the game. After everyone's played a target card and they're all revealed, each family has the opportunity to add notoriety to marches based on their summer cards. In reverse turn order, first you can play any number of held notoriety cards one at a time by resolving the effect and then placing it in the summer cards out of play pile. Then update notoriety based on your recruited allied grains and offices on your family sheet. For each point of notoriety being added, advance your cube by 1 space in a valid march as specified on each card. Even though the notoriety tracks only go to 12, there's no limit to how much notoriety a family can have in a march. If a family's notoriety marker ever exceeds 12, leave one of their cubes on the 12 space and start advancing a second cube up from 0. It's also important to note that the place notoriety step is only performed during the first combat round each winter. Next, it's time for everyone to officially declare their targets for the combat round in turn order. When it's your turn, take your attack indicator marker for this round and place it on the map with the rider side facing up in a march based on your target card options. For a raid, you'll target a farm region in a march or the debatable land. Raids were attacks where the intent was to steal cattle and sheep held by another Reaver family. So typically, it's good to raid farm regions where there are plenty of unprotected sheep. For a feud, you'll target a family seat that has one of your cubes. After years of rivalry, thefts, and perceived injustices, the emotions between 2 rival families on the border would often boil over into a deadly feud. For a jailbreak, you'll target a town jail that has one of your cubes in hopes to free your previously imprisoned Reivers. For battles, you'll target your country's side of a battle event card that's on the board. Battles allow a Reaver to pursue glory, fighting for their native land, either England or Scotland. Battles vary in historical size, with larger ones offering the greatest chance of scoring hits to earn victory points and can potentially award you with a huge notoriety boost, especially in the largest battles. When you place your attack indicator, you'll also commit horses by placing one or more of your available horses from the box in your march next to your attack indicator. At least one horse must be committed to each attack, and if it's the first round of winter, at least one available horse must be left back in the box so that horse can lead the second round attack. Next, the attacker flips over any defense tokens protecting the target in a raid, feud, or jailbreak. After a defense token has been revealed, the defender has the option to play their warden card by placing it in the target discards pile in order to move or swap in a different defense token and gain a +1 die roll modifier on all of their defense dice. However, any moved or swapped tokens must result in all tokens ending up in a valid final location. Only tokens with green dice can be in a farm region, and gray dice are required for a token occupying a town or family seat slot. After the defender has made a final decision on committing their warden card, the attacker can now further boost their chances by playing one or more held summer cards that are appropriate for this combat type. Set any cards played face up near the combat for ease of reference. After you perform these select target region steps for the first target card, move on to the next target card following the same steps. Now that each family has a valid target declared for attack, players simultaneously determine how many combat dice will be rolled for the attacker and defender involved in their target card's attack by placing dice tokens on their family sheet. These tokens make it easy to facilitate gathering dice when it's time to resolve your attack. For attacking, you'll gain dice for horses, notoriety, different cards, sheep, and cubes depending on the type of attack. For defense, you gain dice for peels, defense tokens, a castle garrison, and battle dice as shown on each battle card. There are helpful tables on page 16 of the rulebook to guide you on calculating how many attack and defense dice will be rolled, and the attack dice options are also summarized on the player aid for quick reference. Even though the first few combats resolved might change the status of notoriety, sheep, or feud cubes on the map by the time later combats are resolved, you never change the number of dice that were originally calculated. And again, players can total up attack and defense dice for their targeted combat simultaneously. Then you'll resolve each combat in turn order. Each player involved rolls all of the dice allocated in the previous step, noting that anyone can roll the defense dice in a battle since none of the players are directly defending in battles. Depending on the type of combat, each roll is evaluated and rewards are determined according to the combat rolls table on the back of the player aid. However, before determining the outcome of a combat, your die results may be modified, and you might even get the opportunity to reroll some dice. With certain target cards, the attacker adds +1 to the number shown on each die they rolled, but for attack dice, a 6 modified to a 7 is always treated as a 6. The defender may also have a +1 modifier on all dice rolled if there's a warden defense token defending the target, or if the defender played their warden card in response to a raid, feud, or jailbreak in their home march. And you'll notice on the defense combat rolls table, a die modified to a 7 or higher does have its own result, and oof. Those results are powerful and not great for the attacker. Some events and offices may allow players to reroll dice if the result was a miss. There might even be multiple sources available to you for rerolls, an event card and office cards, but you can only choose one, and each miss die may only be rerolled once. There will be cases where both the attacker and defender may be able to reroll dice, so both players should roll their dice before either one decides on rerolls. After you rolled your dice, check the combat rolls table for the corresponding type of combat to resolve the attacker and defender's dice rolls. Off the bat, any die results that aren't shown on the combat rolls tables are considered misses. For example, in a raid, each unblocked 3 or 4 are cattle hits, and for each of those hits, you gain 1 cattle from the defender and score 1 VP. Each unblocked 5 or 6 is a sheep hit, and for each of those, you gain 1 unbastled sheep from the targeted farm. If you roll more hits than the defender has of the targeted livestock, you still gain the corresponding victory points. If the attacker scored any victory points from the raid, place one of the defender's cubes in the attacker's feud box. So you're probably wondering, how are hits blocked? You'll compare the attack dice to the defense dice rolled, so as you can see on the defense rolls table, for a raid, each 5 blocks one of the attacker's hits. When deciding which hits to block, first block the most common type of hit between cattle and sheep, and then if both are tied, block a cattle hit. So if the attacker has 3 sheep hits and 2 cattle hits, the first block would nullify a sheep hit. Then you'd have 2 hits of each, so you'll block a cattle hit next time. When it comes to 6s, the first one results in a capture where the attacker places a cube in the defender's jail and loses 1 horse. Any 6s beyond that are considered blocks, just like 5s. And watch out if the defender has any 7s in a raid. The first 7 means the attacker is hanged and loses 1 horse, and the defender gains 6 victory points. Each subsequent 7 is a capture, as if a 6 was rolled. The other types of combat are resolved similarly, but the attack rewards and defense benefits vary slightly, as shown on the combat rolls tables. For example, in a feud, whichever side scores more hits gains +2 notoriety in the corresponding march, and the losing side drops by 1 notoriety. If both sides have the same number of hits, no notoriety change occurs. Battles are slightly different since there are 2 different sides attacking, and both sides' hits need to be compared to determine which side gains the post-combat awards for a particular battle card. After the first attack, place cubes next to the attacker's attack indicator matching the number of unblocked hits, and that attacker gains a number of VP per unblocked hit according to the battle card. After the second attack on this battle card is resolved, the second attacker also gains VP for each unblocked hit, and you'll know whether the first or second attacker scored the most unblocked hits. That family gains notoriety in the target march equal to the value shown on the battle card. If a battle was only contested by one side, that side is declared the winner and gains notoriety even if they didn't score any unblocked hits. If a battle is completely uncontested on either side, discard the event card. After each combat is resolved, return your attacking horses to the box in the attacker's march and flip them on their side since they won't be available again until a future turn. You'll also flip the attack indicator over to show the combat has been resolved, place any played summer cards in the summer cards out of play pile, and place the target card in the target discards pile. To recap, you'll resolve each target card's combat one at a time, then you'll repeat steps B, D, E, and F for a second round of combat in winter. Then you'll breeze through a few maintenance steps in spring to prepare for the next turn. First, reset the board to prepare for summer. Return any attack indicator markers still on the board back to their owners. Stand up your exhausted horses, set the farm region of the debatable land to have exactly 2 sheep, place the current event cards in the event cards discard pile, and then each family returns their defense tokens to their defense token box. However, skip these reset steps if it's the third and final turn of the game, since there's no turn to prepare for. Next, you'll perform spring scoring. Add 2 points to each family's score for each cube in their town's jail. Then award victory points for the 2 families with the highest notoriety in each in-play march, including the debatable land. The March Notoriety VP scoring table on the player aid shows you how many points the families in first and second place should score based on which turn it is. If 2 or more families are tied for first place, all of them receive the second place points, and in this case, the second place family or families won't gain any points. And if 2 or more families are tied for second place in a march, don't award second place victory points at all. If it's turn 3, families can now play Border Ballad spring cards to gain additional points. For a more thematic touch, you can even have each player read out the full text on their ballad card before scoring it. At this point, each family's total victory points should be up to date on the victory track. And if you're worried about cubes being jostled around on the victory track, alternatively, you can use the printed score sheet found on the back of the rulebook. Similar to the reset step, The final step of spring only happens on turns 1 and 2. The families who are trailing on the victory track gain bonus actions. The player controlling the family in last place can either select and play a discarded summer card, or take a default action instead of selecting a card. If this player decides to select a discarded summer card, ignore cattle costs and bonuses. Then all other families in the bottom half of families based on their position on the victory track get to take one default action. If there are any ties when determining which families gain bonus actions, use the usual tie-breaking procedures summarized on the player aid. Then, if it isn't turn 3, begin the next turn of the game, starting with summer. At the end of turn 3, families are awarded additional victory points based on their remaining livestock. Gain 3 points for every 2 horses your family has, gain 2 points for every 2 sheep, and gain 1 point for every 2 cattle in your possession. Then, the family with the highest victory point total is the winner. And if any families are tied for first place, use the same tie-breaking method I mentioned earlier in the video. The tied family with the most horses would be the winner. If there's still a tie, then see who has the most sheep, then the most cattle to determine who wins. And if somehow there's still a tie, the family with the highest numbered summer card on their family sheet wins. And that's how you play Border Reivers. There's also a historical booklet with a wealth of historical background information, advanced rules, as well as rules for playing solo, but I'll leave you to explore those on your own. Border Reivers feels very thematic and unique, both in its historical topic and how it feels to play it, since it combines elements from war games with card drafting and resource management found in Euro games. The flow of the game is so compelling. You're drafting and playing cards in summer to give your family a variety of benefits and unique abilities, then secretly placing your defense tokens in autumn. And by winter, you're planning and executing a variety of different types of combat, which always feels exciting. It's also great that there's a lot of simultaneous thinking and gameplay, which minimizes downtime. If Border Reivers looks like a game you'd enjoy, be sure to check out its page on Board Game Geek or the GMT Games website to learn more. I'm Candace Harris from Board Game Geek, and that is how you play Border Reivers. Have a wonderful day.